Great, welcome. This is Chaumtoli Huq. I'm the editor of Law at the Margins. Law at the Margins is innovative law and media platform. The goal of Law at the Margins is to lift up the issue of social justice around the world. It is to lift up stories and narratives that are oftentimes ignored in mainstream media as well as mainstream advocacy. Tonight, we're really excited to be able to host and facilitate a conversation, and an important one, around the Rohingya crisis, and some will say Rohingya genocide. The issues that we're going to hear about are from activists from different parts of the United States, based in Canada, regarding the Rohingya issue, both in Myanmar or formerly Burma, as well as issues regarding the refugees. We welcome everyone that's participating. What we see this conversation as starting is to facilitate and to coordinate all of our support work for the community so that we can lift that up both at multiple levels, whether it's United Nations, local advocacy work, support, humanitarian efforts, so that we can really work together. I'm really excited to have our three sort of panelists today. And the goal is really to get us involved and activated to support the community. I'm going to introduce our panelists. They're going to speak for 15 minutes. I'll be chatting with our participants, those of you who are registered. If you are actively working around this issue, let us know. Tell us in the chat box. We're also thankful to have our associate editor, Shahana Hanif, who will be tweeting with the hashtag Rohingya Solidarity. So follow the conversation there as well. So first, I'm going to have Myra Dage Pao, who is a Karen human rights activist, herself formerly an internally displaced person, as well as a refugee for 17 years, and now the executive director of the US campaign for Burma and DC. She's been active as a Karen women's organization. She has also been active around multiple fronts in terms of foreign policy, advocacy for all communities in Myanmar. And she's going to give us a little bit about the history of this conflict, as well as how it impacts other communities. Next, we're really excited to have Ahmed Ullah, who's a Rohingya activist who was born in the refugee camp in Bangladesh and is now a community advocate in Canada. He's residing there with his mother and sister, and as an activist based in Canada, he's been doing some amazing work around theater and arts, and I hope that he will share with us about his theater production, I Am Rohingya. And finally, but not least, we have Adam Carroll. He's currently in New York and the United Nations Program Director for the Burma Task Force, USA. With a background in human rights and advocacy, Adam has worked for 5 years in Islamic Circle in North America after the 9/11 attacks. And he's been exclusively working around Burma support work and will share with us some actions that we can take in United States to support the Rohingya. So with that, I welcome each of our guests. I welcome all of those who are listening in. Please join me and on the chat box on the side as we listen to each of our activists. After the panel, we're going to take your question and answer and think about what we can do to really bring about what the title of this webinar is, Global Solidarity for the Rohingya Community. With that, I'd like to invite Myra to start us off. Welcome, Myra.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Please let me know if I run out of time. I don't want to take away anybody's time. So firstly, I wanted to making sure that everyone I'm talking about today. So basically, the whole idea, my main purpose for the talk tonight is firstly to making sure that you understand where the problem comes from and how we can collectively help out with little ways. So the Burma you know now is not the Burma that actually has been. Why the reason I'm saying that is that perhaps many people don't know that Burma has been having the institutionalized discrimination policy ever since 1948, as soon as they gained independence from the British. And the Burmese military came up with a policy that is that is known as Burmanization, basically. Well set up. The whole idea is to assimilate non-Burmese ethnic groups into the Burman ethnic group. So basically to turn everyone into Burman, including me, Karen, or the brother Ula over there, Rohingya. Because we don't accept those. And that is why we become their enemy, and we've been persecuted ever since. And the persecution has been going on ever since 1948, where they started implementing this piece of policy. But many of you will be asking in the back of your head, why it has to be the very understanding to work power and greed. Because for as long as they have the power, then they can control everybody. And for as long as they can control land, which are very rich in natural resources, not just natural resources, but human resources, then they own everything. And so with that, they create the divide and rule policy where we don't even know each other, let alone have I known Rohingya 30 years ago? No, I didn't. All is because of the divide and rule policy that keeps us away from each other. We don't even know each other. I mean, I knew about Rohingya like 15 to 17 years ago when I started doing advocacy work. And so the persecution on the ethnic minority has been going on ever since. Like you heard the introduction earlier. An internally displaced person. I was born in as an internally displaced person and then a refugee. So I had never had an ID card. I've never been a Burmese person in my own country, let alone I call myself. And so a lot of people like me are in many other ethnic states. The only difference is that the Burmese government cannot really ignore the fact that, cannot lie to the world, the fact that we are not the people of Burma. All is because our leaders, they're trying to maintain control and fight back, whether they get this or not. They're trying to fight back for our own self-determination. And that is why they control the area, and then we can still maintain part of our life and our culture, our language, and all this stuff. Why I'm giving you all this stuff when we're talking about Rohingya issues, I'm supposed to talk about Rohingya issues is to give you between our situation and the Rohingya is somewhat very different. They have never had a chance to establish themselves. Although before 1962, the military dictator came into power, they had their own leadership to govern, to organize their own people. But all of a sudden, the military dictator came into power and literally trying to wipe them out. And that is why many of you who follow the issues back in mid to late 70s, you have like hundreds of thousands of Rohingya people pouring into Bangladesh because of the pushed out. And then coming 1982, literally the Burmese military dictators came out with a citizenship law that does not even allow the Rohingya people to become the citizens. And it's not just that. I'm pretty sure you all follow freedom of mobilization, freedom to education, to health, to anything that anybody can have access to. They don't have those access. But uh, other ethnicities also have, yes. The reason you don't get to hear much about it is because, to a certain extent, because we have our own area, our own places where we run our own school, our own spaces. And that is why we have the opportunity to educate people in our own community, although the Burmese government is not allowed. And that is why here it creates the zones between us. So the places where I live, it's literally called black zone, meaning that that is a war zone. And that is why a lot of times, pretty much even until now, the international community will come in and do humanitarian work or any other work, but they will be warned, you don't go to the black zone because that's where fighting is going on, and that is why you can get into trouble and you can get killed. And so that's how we bring ourselves, although even we cannot catch up with the world, but to a certain extent, we still have access to some part of education, some part of health. But of course, the people are still need a lot of help. But at the same time, when you look at the Rohingya situation, they don't have those access. And that is why they are literally where sometimes when I couldn't even start them up to speed. But right now, we don't even talk about bringing them up to speed. We just talk about their basic rights and their safety, which is still in a big question. And how many people pay attention to it is very important. And that is why we're trying to bring the attention to our audience tonight. But some of you also will be asking, so why Rohingya? Well, why not other Muslims? Well, the other Muslims in Burma and the Rohingya, they are still somewhat different. You have a lot of Muslims, Burmese Muslims who come from many other countries, immigrant, and then, of course, live in the country generation after another. So they are migrated Muslims, whereas the Rohingya, they came in, they settled down like every other ethnic groups. They settle down, they have their own little location, they have their own structure where they run their people, they do their thing. And that is located at the northern part of Rakhine State. And so they own their lands, they have natural resources, they have everything that we have too. But because the Burmese government wanted all the stuff that they have, that is why they kicked them out. They're trying to throw them out of their own homes, their own places where they live. And it's not just that, not even allowing them to be called the people of Burma. And so if that is the case, then where this leads to? Of course, it's totally finally leads us to the word we always use with the case of Rohingya is stateless people, because they cannot live in Burma, although they have homes. But at the same time, they've been perceived as they are the people who migrated from Bangladesh. Okay, I'm not saying that there is nobody from Bangladesh coming into Burma and migrated there. Even the Rohingya community, the Rohingya leaders that I have had contact with, worked with, they do. There are some migrated Bangladesh population, but it's not really to the point where what the Burmese government said the number is. So if that is the case, then this is not really true, because these people are the native people there, and they're supposed to have the rights like every. So, but then I also wanted to bring us to another piece of information, is that you heard about Burma has 135 sub-ethnic groups. Well, which country that has 135 five ethnic groups? But at the same time, you have 135 ethnic groups, and why you can't even add Rohingya onto one of one of those 135. That just doesn't make sense to me. If that makes sense to anybody, please explain to me, because I just don't get it. But nowadays, I also learned that it's not just Rohingya that is not on the list. Very recently, just last week, Lahu people who have been living in Shan State ever since, they are not also included in the list. And they are also restricted from moving around, going from place to place. And now it's even becoming worse. In the northern part of Shan State, the Wa population, they cannot even go from one city to another. So my point is that, okay, sorry, let me take you back for another point before I make the point. But at the same time, pathetically speaking, 2 to 3 weeks ago, there was another piece of information where they wanted to recognize another new sub-ethnic groups, which is the mixed race of Karen and Mon. So the reason why I'm saying it is pathetic is that you cannot even include Rohingya to be one of the ethnic groups. You cannot even include Lahu to be one of the ethnic groups, but you wanted to add on another ethnic group, which is Karen and Mon. So it just doesn't make sense at all. It shows you very clear that the military wanted to do what they wanted to do. Whatever that affect other people's lives, it is not the case for them. So if that is the case, I don't know how much time I have left, but before I go further, I just wanted to inform all the audience that my aim for today is also to inform all of us about what I see is important is what I call inclusive advocacy. So basically, when we do advocacy on Rohingya issues, please continue doing what you're doing, which is very important. They need our help at this point. But at the same time, to make our case stronger, I think it is also important to bring in other ethnic situation in order to tell the world that this is not their thing is that the military, what they're trying to do is that they're trying to persecute not just Rohingya but also every other ethnic groups in a sense that they wanted to run the whole country by themselves. So either you become a Burman or you don't have a space here. Because right now, what also worries me to a certain extent is that I start seeing some people, not a lot, but it could become more in the near future, which I don't want to see, is that like division, some people create hate, some people already suffer enough. I don't want to see other ethnic groups to have that Rohingya sentiment just because, oh, people are advocating on their behalf, but what about us? Nobody talked about our issues. When the Burmese military dropped bombs at the Kachin state, the Kachin IDP area almost on regular basis, and then people in Shan State are running for lives, and now in Lasho, one of the biggest the biggest city in Shan State, also was under very strict security watch. So I just wanted to give us the idea of the people in Burma. Many of them wanted to do more for Rohingya issues, but at the same time, they're trying to craft the space where they don't have that much and they don't get that much support. And that is why they're still in the process of working on it, trying to teach people about how to ignore hate speech. That is why they're trying to create their educational tools and then reaching out to the community. So I think to a certain extent, we have to also, while we build up the coalition outside of Burma, I think it is also very important to help support the coalition that trying to speak on behalf of the Rohingya people inside Burma. And I think that's one thing that I wanted to remind us. but at the same time, going back to the repatriation, I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over, but we have time for Q&A, and I'm willing to answer any question you may have. Going back to repatriation, I just wanted to tell you the Burmese military, as well as the Burmese government right now, they don't have any political will. And if that is the case, there is no safety for this Rohingya population.
Mm.
So basically, to me, repatriation is not an option at all at this point, because they're going to go back and they're going to put into a place where it's like concentration camp, literally. They don't have access to anything unless people come in and give them a humanitarian assistance. But at the same time, the military doesn't allow the humanitarian assistance to the point where the population needs and it can have enough. If that is the case, then I don't really know how these people can live safely if they are returned, because they're not going to get to go and live in their homes. And do they do this to only the Rohingya population? They also do this to the Karen refugees, to the Shan refugees, to the Kachin refugees. The only difference is that, as I said earlier, because the Karen, the other ethnic groups, have the opportunity to build up their leadership, their strong leadership foundation, and that is why they can still do some of the stuff for the people, although the Burmese government and the Burmese military don't have the political will. But in the case of Rohingya, they don't have this foundation, so I just don't see the point to push them back into Burma right now, unless we want to kill them. And so everyone who does the advocacy, I think we have to make this very clear to the international community, to the UNHCR, which a lot of time UNHCR also want to think that, yes, it's okay to take them back. And that is why back in the repatriation, the last batch, they were a part of it. But after all, they didn't really look out for it. So now look where the Rohingya people are. Are they better off? They are not. They are still in the same situation and even becoming worse. So, all in all, I wanted to say that thank you very much for whoever who are on the webinar right now, that you pay attention to the need for the people, and keep doing what you're doing. And if you need resources, if you need something, you want to know more, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is myradah@gmail.com, so that you can remember it much easier. And I'm going to leave it here, and I'm willing to answer any question you may have towards the end. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Myra, for giving us a little bit of context. I think that what I took away from what you said is that we need to pay particular attention to the Rohingya issue at the moment, but also keep in mind that the Burmese military has been persecuting and attacking other communities throughout Burma, including your own. And so that any kind of advocacy really has to work on both fronts. So I appreciate that perspective. Next, I'd like to invite Ahmed, who's a Rohingya activist born in the refugee camp, to talk about his own experiences and then also thoughts around the current issue, a little bit about the repatriation agreements that Myra brought up, and then just the work that you're doing in Canada for refugees. And for those who are listening, please, any contacts we will provide for those, including Myra's email. Please introduce yourself, and if you have any questions or thoughts at the end, we'll have a Q&A. So Ahmed.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you everyone for joining the webinar. So I will share a little bit about my life in the refugee camp. I lost my father at the age of 2. After losing my father, my mother was traumatized with mental illness. So it was a very hard situation for my family, as me and my sister were very young and my mommy mentally traumatized. We had no support, and at the time there was no government or any World Food Program supporting us at the time in the refugee camp in Nayapura, Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, where all this recent crisis is happening, where the people are coming in. So having that as a kid, and as a kid without proper guidance and proper healthcare, proper education, proper nutrition, I I have lost hope in life that I might make it somewhere in life someday.
Mm.
So we struggled through every single hardship. And at the age of 7, I thought to myself that I wanted to be educated, someday be educated and speak about my people and about what happened. So I went to an institute, and I have shared this. Autumn, my me, it might be twice for Autumn to hear this story, but when I was in the refugee camp, I wanted to go to the schools that government built after many years later, and I was told that I cannot be registered in the institute because I did not have proper guidance and proper parent to guide me through schooling. So I was rejected. They told me that people like me are worthless and shouldn't be educated. That's what I was told. I was left with a broken heart, a child who lost hope. And I got a job at a coffee shop, working 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. Enough. I made enough just to provide one meal per day for my family. Worked every single day, worked like a slave. Worked there for many years. Then, after someone saw that my family needed help and my mom needed medical treatment, and someone from Windsor, Ontario, Canada saw my mom, and they said they wanted to sponsor my family privately to Canada so they can have a better life in Canada. After coming here, we've been displaced. Um, we've been put in separate home because my mom was unfit to be a parent in Canadian society. So we were bounced around in foster homes. That sorry, I'm going off and things that I shouldn't be really discussing. But yeah, after being in foster care for so long, I gathered I was finally reconnected with my community in Canada. There's a base in Kitchener where about 250 Rohingyas live. So I gathered with the Rohingyas, and there's a Muslim organization called uh, Muslim Social Services of KW Waterloo. They got some funding from the city of Kitchener to do some trauma programs and programs on not to do drugs and drug addiction programs.
Mm.
So when the program coordinator saw us, he said, "You guys don't need none of these things, so we don't have to come doing the session anymore about the drugs because you guys don't look like the kids who would do drugs." So he asked us. His name, the coordinator, his name is Yusuf Zine. He asked us what we wanted to do with the money and with the session, the spaces we got. All the kids said, let's do a play. Let's do a theatrical play. And the director asked, what do you want to do a play about? All the kids said, let's do a play about the plight of the Rohingya people.
Mm.
Let's do a play based on our parents' lives, based on our lives. And none of these kids had theatrical experience. None of them went to theater school. Nobody had any form of theater training. But the coordinator, he was in a Disney show, and he had some other theatrical background, and he did his master's also based on theater programs. So we started writing the play. Everybody wrote the play, contributed a little bit of everything, and we came up with the play about a year. We rehearsed for a whole year. Then we had a sold out show of 400 people first show, and second show we have 450 people. Third show we did for Islamic Relief Canada with Mehdi Hassan as a keynote speaker,
Mm.
where we had 920 plus people, and we raised over $500,000 in one night. So that gave us hope that we had a voice, we have a story to tell that people wanted to hear and people should hear. So we thought maybe put into a documentary, because we can't have all the cast traveling everywhere to do a show, because it costs, theater space costs a lot of money, and we didn't have much money to do the shows everywhere. So we came up with a documentary that will be released in April, and we're going to be having a premiere in the United Nations headquarters, inshallah, soon, somewhere in April. And after getting into the play, I realized how much impact we had on the people, on the issue, and how much people are willing to hear. That's when I thought, I've been through this, and I need to do something about it, because I have people calling me from back home. I have people calling my mom from back home. So that pushes me to amplify their voice, our voice, to a higher level. So that's when I gathered with about 40 youth from the Rohingya community in Canada to come up with an organization called Canadian Rohingya Development Initiative, where we founded the organization to focus on, to speak about the plight of the Rohingya people, and to come up with some form of educational scholarship by getting help from the government, and also speaking about the Rohingya people at higher level, at the federal level, knocking on every single door, every politician's door, whether it was helpful or not. We still did, driving sometime, leaving school behind, leaving work behind, and we still go to meetings where we have to drive for 10 hours just to attend, just to amplify the voice. Group of youth who are highly dedicated just to see something to be done about their people. Now we're mainly focused on, because let me talk about the reputation a little. Myra covered it very good. I was there recently in Myanmar, in the people, where the people are coming, the camp in Bangladesh from Myanmar. I was there recently in Bangladesh. I was 2 weeks, where I have witnessed many things that I haven't witnessed myself when I was in that camp. Things that I have never realized that was happening. Things people need, the help. How badly these people have been hurt, how badly these people have been wounded, how badly the women are being raped, and how the kids, over 40,000 minors, been orphaned.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at those, and you see all this government, Bangladesh and Myanmar, talking about repatriation, it it seems to me like none of this ever happened. None of this Rohingya issue ever happened, because they made it look like that they could just cover it up and bring these people back and forth. This has been going on for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
This has been happening for 40 years. I was born in the refugee camp. I'm 24 years old. And my mom, she was very young when she moved to the refugee camp. And the people are just going back and forward, and many people are dying. And even the um, Philip Gandhi, he said the situation is not getting any better. It is not safe for the Rohingyas to go back. But yet, Bangladesh and Myanmar is talking about repatriation. We did not, my organization and I, we did not try to focus on the repatriation work, because we want to try to look out for the people, because we know they will be there for a very, very long time. We're trying to gather, as Burma Task Force Canada, we've been working with Burma Task Force here to come up with solution to push the government to make sure they stop this, and trying to get some sponsorship for the Rohingya people, trying to get some scholarship for Rohingya students. We launched a campaign recently on Lunch Good to get some blanket, because we have people calling us saying it is very cold and people need some sort of things to warm them. But we just recently launched a campaign, and the campaign didn't do much, didn't do really good. And we still have the campaign running and Lunch Good for the blanket appeal. But everybody in the organization, we contributed together from our own personal pocket. There will be a blanket distribution happening in Cox Bazar today from our organization. We'll try to cover about 400 families, whatever we can, because We all are students, and it's very hard. It is very, very hard for us to support them any financial way because we have to leave our work behind because we used to work before all this crisis got intact. We stopped working because this needed more attention than we could give with the work time. So end of the day, what we come to, I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm running. I know I'm running all over the place and I'm taking lots of time. End of the day is we have to look at this as it. What if it was our crisis? If what if it was happening in our own home? What if it was happening in America? What if it's happening in Canada? Wherever your family is, just imagine what if it's happening there. Imagine as if your family is going through all that. You know, we don't have to wait for it all to happen here. We could reach out to our government leaders. We could reach out to our senators, our president, prime minister. Reach out to anybody. Write a letter because these people needs us. Today's us. Tomorrow it'll be someone else. Today's happening in Myanmar. It might happen anywhere else another day because, as great Martin Luther King said, threat to justice any. Sorry, I'm really bad with quote. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We have to look at that because Rwanda happened. Lots of things are happening around the world. We have to look at all those little kids that are dying every single day and all those women that are being raped. We could make it all stop. We just have to focus on how important it is because lots of people, their life is in danger. Nobody chose this. Nobody chose this to be attacked. Nobody chose this to be raped. Nobody chose this to be illegal. Nobody should be illegal. They were from there. They've been there. They had a perfect normal life until someone decided that they shouldn't have it. I suffered that as a child, that I shouldn't have to go through all that living in a refugee camp knowing that I'm not safe. No child deserves that. No child in Bangladesh right now is standing for food. I know hundreds of kids are standing online right now to get some food. We don't we don't have to watch them suffer. We could all work together. We could all do something for these people. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Ahmed. I think the personal experience to your activism is really powerful, and will hopefully move folks to get involved. There is one question from Shahana before I invite Adam, maybe if you wanted to address it, which is there any youth activism in the United States? Are you connecting with youth Rohingya activists in the United States? So if you wanted to answer that question, and then next we'll invite Adam to share about Burma Task Force's work, any other issues maybe we need to cover, and then specific campaigns that you can get involved in. So Ahmed, are there youth activists in the United States?
Yes, there's because there is a lot of them, and as you know, Adam also might be in contact with lots of them because they're having a rally on Wednesday, where they invited, Burma Task Force invited lots of people to come down, and I was also supposed to come. Unfortunately, I have some other things going on. It was very nice of Burma Task Force to even invite few of us here from Canada to amplify the voice, and they're having a wonderful uh, uh, legislation day in Washington D.C. So there is lots of youth in America who are also fighting for the plight of the Rohingya people. And I will leave my email address on the comment. Please do reach out to me. And also, Adam will also share more about that because Burma Task Force has contact with most of those youth, and so do I.
Great. All right. Excellent. So, Adam, just wanted to bring you in. You've been working on this issue for many years. Maybe before you sort of jump to the lobby advocacy day, are there other themes that you want to address around the Rohingya issue? I think one of the questions that come up for me is why this crisis or genocide sort of now. In 2017, there's been such an exodus out of Myanmar, Burma, and maybe later, maybe Myra can jump in. Is that we understand that the Burmese military has always been persecuting ethnic minorities, and but why is this sort of taking on this more public acute crisis? I read a statistic that said about 90% of Rohingya have left Myanmar as of now, with only about maybe 70,000 or so remaining. So maybe if you can, I think that piece is not clear. We understand that there's always been persecution, that the community has been particularly vulnerable because of the lack of internal systems that Myra mentioned about other communities. But why Rohingya, and it feels particularly targeted, and why now? Why is this coming up in such a really ethnic cleansing, genocide? I mean, these are very strong war crimes. If you could really give us some context of that, and then anything else you'd like to share.
Yeah, thank you, Chaumtoli, for including me. And I think it's really important that we have this group of speakers speaking from experience, and also for the need for more solidarity between the ethnic groups that have been targeted by the Myanmar military over so many decades. The situation is getting worse. Certainly, the erasure of the Rohingya from northern Rakhine State, economic profit motive. Hate, yes, we can talk about Islamophobia, institutionalized and promoted by extremist Buddhist supremacists, and that they're allied with the military. And the military is behind everything, pulling strings, and they've been puppet masters for generations now in Burma, Myanmar. The profit motive could be seen in some satellite photos that came to light just a couple of days ago. I was just at an Amnesty International conference yesterday, and Michael from Amnesty showed some slides, though I've seen them from Human Rights Watch as well, and you could just Google Human Rights Watch and you'll see them because they're very new. They're pictures not only of the Rohingya neighborhood being burned, but then a later picture of the Rohingya neighborhood being bulldozed, and then a later picture of a Rohingya neighborhood having a road built right over it, had never been. And meanwhile, the non-Rohingya neighborhood with its swimming pools is untouched, and it's just yards away, just meters away. And so it's all being done, very methodically. Atrocities, and those don't seem methodical, except that there seems to be a method there too in the madness. The military comes in, and as people flee, the evidence shows that they shoot at their backs, and a lot of people were also killed that way, but all injured, and the wounds are very much agreeing with those testimonies. So that there's so many testimonies of atrocities, and now pictures of the mass graves, and no doubt there are many more. Acid being used to dissolve the dead bodies. Real horrendous things that could take our attention and should. This is how groups are still arguing about whether this is genocide or not, but whatever one wants to call this, this horror. The international community has been somewhat stuck. Again, why? Because of the profit motive, because China is on the Security Council. China is a protector of Myanmar's government and military, is investing in Rakhine State. There are grandiose plans for gas pipelines going from the various gas fields off the coast. And all of this has just been discovered, just being developed. What's happened now is not the democratization of Burma, but it's the opening of markets. So again, into this fusion of capitalism with democracy, that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing an authoritarian government using some of the tools of democracy for command and control. There is hope eventually for a softening of this. There are good civil society people who are also under a cloud. There's intelligence. There is threat. Recent arrests of the Reuters reporters for reporting mass graves is just another reminder of many that keep civil society quiet. And certainly there's a lot of Islamophobia, and the task force does look at that. We're based originally as a Muslim American organization, but we work in partnership as much as we can with all human rights support. And so instead of making this a Muslim issue, it's really a human rights issue that should concern all. And we need to build those alliances and empower the impacted community. In New York, there's a few Rohingya. In Chicago, there are more. In Wisconsin, they're scattered around maybe 4,000, maybe 4,500 at most. Many of them just working several jobs just to survive. Many who have not had much of a chance for education. So it's going to be a very long challenge to empower the community. But as we speak, there's going to be there's a Berlin conference going on with many activists arriving today. There's also increasing opportunities to talk about this crisis, but what I don't see is solutions. And we were just talking about the repatriation farce, and obviously that was promoted by China also as a bilateral agreement between Burma and Bangladesh, and it's just about putting a few Rohingya back into IDP camps with barbed wire going around the concentration camp and utterly excluding the rest of Burma. This is what happened after 2012, and people are still there in those camps. This is what's happened to other ethnic groups as well on the margins in the other states. Burma. And so Burma itself, viable nation, is really very fragile. And the peace process, Annan's also roadmap to coexistence, all of this seems more and more elusive, but these are signs of possibility, of future hope. Will we need peacekeepers in safe zones? Will we need some autonomy in the Rakhine State? What would that even mean? There's serious questions, and they're not being asked seriously at the UN because of the blocking of China. They need to be also asked here in the US. And on Wednesday, the February 28th, where a Burma task force with its allies is organizing a lobby day, Rohingya Advocacy Day on the Hill. And everyone is invited at 8:30 in the morning. We're meeting at in the Longworth Senate building. The details are on our website, force.org. There's also a separate link if you go to our campaigns link, which gives you a lot of materials, not only to go to the Advocacy Day, but to contact you. And, this has been a bipartisan issue in the past. some of the Republicans are slower to take action on human rights. But when you talk about religious freedom, some talk about China, some of them get it for whatever reason. We're trying to really convince a number of law take a very rare bipartisan step to do something meaningful. So we're going to, we have some Jewish rabbis, coming. We have a couple of Buddhists who have signed up. We really want to try to build this movement, and it's really important that it builds. And so we have we don't have as many Rohingya as we had hoped joining us, and I wish we had Brother Ahmed, hopefully the next time. But we have about, I think, 8 coming with us, and who will be visiting and speaking from experience. And just recently, I met with the French mission at the UN and brought a couple. It's a Burmese Buddhist, actually a Rakhine Buddhist wife and a Rohingya husband, and they are just arrived here in New York, and they were willing to tell their story about all the suffering they've gone through as an interfaith couple. People don't realize that this is actually illegal to have an interfaith marriage, and they've really suffered jail and death threats and beatings. Here, hopefully it will work out. U.S. does not take many refugees, as everyone knows, and so there are alliances to be made between Rohingya advocates and also the refugee rights movement. And I hope that we can build this. With all the people who care about DACA, we need to also link and support each other. So there are a lot of people who need the policies to really improve. Much more to speak about, but I think that the main thing is, if there's a way to support our advocacy, pushing sanctions bills. We believe that without sanctions, there will be no improvement in policies in Burma. And we actually think the sanctions need to be a lot stronger than they are in these current bills, but we are supporting them. And hopefully, all more steps we take in the right direction. If we're going together, hopefully we'll get to our destination together.
Great.
So I guess that's all I would say.
No, that's great. So I'm going to invite those who are listening to post their questions on the Twitter chat. Before we get to the questions, I thought I would just open it up. It seems like there work happening at multi-levels. Adam talked about the Advocacy Day that's on the 28th. I posted a link, and I'll post that to everyone who registered. There's the refugee work with that Ahmed was talking about, and then sort of the inclusive advocacy that Myra was also mentioning. There also seems to be a lot of work also just with refugees in the camps in Bangladesh, with provision of just basic human needs of a blanket, food. Are there other efforts that we should be aware of? Is there a way that all of these efforts are being connected? One of the reasons why I wanted to have this webinar is that it seemed like there was amazing work happening in multiple fronts, and that's okay. It needs to happen. As in the work in Burma, Myanmar, in Bangladesh, around the repatriation, refugee issues, humanitarian, and then more sort of policy. Is there a way that all of these are being brought together in some fashion? So 2 questions. One is there other things that are happening that we should be plugged into? And are there efforts to kind of coordinate all of this effort, which feels like needs to happen in some way? So I maybe start with Myra, and then who else wants to answer that? And in the meantime, guests, post your questions, and we're going to go about hard stop until 9:30, and maybe a little bit sooner we can log off. But Myra, are there other campaigns we need to be aware of? Are there coordinations happening?
Thank you. Well, before I go there, I wanted to go back to your question earlier.
Yes.
Well, the only reason why now is because we have more access to media, we have access to more information and all those stuff, as well as now everyone has the phone. So if something happened, they get to take picture, they get to post it out. But the struggle, the persecution has been there ever since. And I mean, if you go back to late 70s, they were pushed out like hundreds of thousands of them, countless overnight. Do we know anything about those? Because the censor of the information, that is why nobody have access to any of those. Nobody's dare to put anything out, because a lot of times you also have to save your own life. But at the same time, it's not just Rohingya issues. It's also the other ethnic issues. Like when 1995, when I fled overnight, and at about another over 100,000 Korean refugees that will literally have to cross the river overnight and became refugee. Nobody knows about it. Nobody heard about it. All is because we don't have access to information back then, and that international community also didn't pay attention to us to the level we are having now. So, but then is that enough? No, it is not enough. That is why we all who are on the webinar tonight, I just wanted to relay the message that it is our responsibility because they need us. It doesn't mean that we have to be Rohingya and then we have to talk about them, or we have to be Burmese and then we have to advocate on their behalves. But we are human beings and we are interrelated, and therefore I take it as my responsibility. So do you. Do I have anything? I don't really have anything specific, but I'd rather mostly coordinate with admin and all those stuff aside from my I shouldn't say my free time, whatever I can. But I also have my side, my stuff over here, so that's why I work with admin on and off. So I, at this point, follow his lead instead of me having something specific. So,
others, Ahmed, are there other campaigns or fundraisers or other efforts that you want to share? My impression is that there are different things happening.
Yes.
But you know, I've been invited to 2 fundraisers in New York by separate organizations, right? And which is great, but it almost feels like a need for a little bit more coordination of all of our advocacy. And so that's partly why I was asking if there's kind of a need for that. Mm-hmm.
So, because my team here, we don't think of the Rohingyas going back because UN hasn't been highly involved in this matter, and we haven't seen any action being taken by the United Nations. So that's why, because since it's been going on for 40 years, we've been working very closely with the immigration minister in Canada, Canadian immigration minister, and I shared this in my panel at the United Nations last month, where we're trying to get Canada to sponsor about 25,000 Rohingyas because that's what they did for the Syrians. So we believe Canada is capable of doing that, and the Trudeau administration is looking into getting the Rohingyas to come over here. And when Canada does things like this, and other countries very much look into that. So if Canada could lead to open up the doors, and when I met with the minister said the Bangladesh is not providing an exit pass for the Rohingya people to leave. And when I met the ambassador of Bangladesh, I heard a different story. Now I'm trying to get bottom of the both sides of the story to see who was telling me the truth and who was not, or to see what is the real story is, because I've been hearing 2 different stories, and I really think that I really hope that the project becomes successful of migrating some Rohingyas, and I believe that everybody in their home country should be looking into that, pushing their government into getting some Rohingyas to come to check, because they do deserve a life. They do deserve freedom of movement. They deserve every single freedom that we have in our countries now. So I believe these people deserves a life. So we should really look into that. And the other campaign is that I mentioned earlier, the winter blanket appeal that we launched at Lunch Good. It'll be very, very nice if people could help out, because we're doing whatever we can from our own personal pocket. Really nice to have people to donate just a little bit of money, because we might not feel the cold because we have a very perfect home. We have blankets in our own home when we have heaters. Whenever we feel cold, we turn on our heaters. Whenever we feel hot, we turn on our AC. So these people really needs our help. Maybe if I share the link with you,
Yes.
you could spread it to the people, to the viewers, to maybe help out any way possible. Thank you, and Brother Adam, you can take it on.
Yeah, definitely. If there are links, please share that with me, and I can post them on our page to encourage folks, even folks who are not maybe on live tonight. This is being recorded so folks can share. There is a comment from around, I'm going to sort of summarize it, is figuring out a solution so Rohingya people can go back home safely. And how do we raise our voices to start this initiative? We really need to step up instead of building camps and organizations. What I heard from Ahmed is actually that maybe that he doesn't see that as being a viability at all. But maybe others can talk about, is there any pathway or policy or effort to have Rohingya go back to what is their rightful home, essentially, right? I guess that's a question that's up there. And others, please post your questions, and then with these questions, we'll sort of wind down the webinar. But Adam, do you want to take that up?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I also think short term, these repatriation deals are empty. And the question is there political will to do the right thing for the Rohingya people, or will this be another black spot? Right now, of course, one could be gloomy, but one should not give up. The Palestinians are still displaced. Many other groups are still displaced. But every situation is different. As far as what needs to happen, I mean, a public education program seriously done in Myanmar could erode the anti-Rohingya sentiment. Racism in the U.S., has been challenged in the courts, but the courts in Myanmar are weak and not independent. But over time, they should improve. But they've also racism has been challenged in popular in the United States and continues to be, just as other liberation movements find a place, for example, in public discourse. And so we have culture wars in the US. The culture wars in Myanmar are harsh, much more harsh. And, but I think, yes, it's about pluralism, it's about tolerance and all those things that may make people yawn, but you find a way to make it real. And if you look at younger Americans, younger North Americans, you see that they really are able to get along across many of the boundaries that used to exist. Not perfectly, but it's a work in progress. So I'd like to see education tried, but this is, and then resistance to the military. Myanmar used to be not a great supporter of the military, but the military is very clever about getting certain monks over to their sides. Other influencers has now put Aung San Suu Kyi in a very delicate political position, and now she's basically complicit, but she's in a very powerless moment. Not to make any kind of excuse, but I think there is hope in the solidarity, potential solidarity that could arise among the Myanmar people. And part of that needs to come from the diaspora. There are so many Burmese refugees in the United States not been mobilized yet for that kind of level of solidarity. So that will be a really important challenge for all of us. And it's something the Burma Task Force needs to get more involved with. We need to listen to people in the Baptist churches, the Karen, churches here. We need to go to Utica. We need to go to Atlanta and all the places where there are Burmese communities, and figure out how we can encourage them to find their own way, because peace depends on the Burmese people themselves. Conference, there was a lot of energy around this issue, and actually tomorrow they're doing their own lobby day, and one of their 3 issues is the sanctions bill for Burma. So there's interest growing. There's opportunities now that didn't exist a while ago. And I think that all the people listening, if you could just figure out what you're going to do, and really don't let us just talk about it, but what are you willing to do? I think we all need and feel the need for action.
Great, thank you so much. I think that there is a very common ask for Advocacy Day on the 28th. There's an appeal for humanitarian appeal for blankets. I think these are, Ahmed, right, in the camps in Bangladesh, if I'm not mistaken. So there are really sort of individual to advocacy, different levels of folks can get involved. Maybe we can just end, unless I'm seeing other questions, with the theme of today's webinar, which is solidarity. Desmaira, did you wanted to add something? Yeah.
Yes. I just wanted to chip in a little bit.
Love it, Linda.
I just wanted to chip in a little bit. It's a very good question, but I just wanted to let our audience know that, yes, the work has been done at many different levels, but at the same time, we are meeting with very hard-headed people, or sometimes I use my blank language, they turn their blind eyes on the situation. And so, are we not talking to people at the U.S. government? I mean, we're based in the U.S., so we're talking about the U.S. We do. But at the same time, they also want their piece of pie. They also have their own interests. So a lot of times they put their interests before the lives of the people. And that is where the bigger problem is. But at the same time, we are the constituents. We have the voice. Just keep pondering. That is something, if that is something that you can do, just keep doing what you're doing. Be consistent and perseverance. We're not doing anything at the UN. Adams know the best. And giving you example, back in when I did the advocacy at the UN, probably almost 10 years ago, we had massive killing going on in Korean state, and I went to meet with Francis Deng back then. He was the head of the genocide prevention. And he was like, oh, are you sure? I don't see genocide going on in your country. And I got to the point where I was really heated up, and I was like, sir, whether you see it or not, whether you call it genocide or not, there is the symptom. If you don't care about it, you're going to regret and think about it for the rest of your life, because you're going to feel guilty for not doing anything if something happened bigger than that. And I'm not a prophet. But now you see Rohingya situation where hundreds of thousands are pouring out in a few days. So I hope Francis Deng wake up a little bit. But I just wanted to say that the UN also has to do their part. They talk a lot, but they didn't walk that walk. And so the only piece of, well, I should say the only piece, but one of the pieces, the tool that we have at the UN is the Burma specific resolution. Their resolution last year was nothing. The Burmese government didn't even give a crap about it. They didn't even respond. So it tells us that the UN doesn't have the political will, so as many other countries. So, but right now, I just wanted to encourage everybody who comes on the call, if you are from those Southeast Asian countries, maybe it will be very helpful to push your government as well to look into the Rohingya situations and take it very seriously. The problem is that I used to meet with several countries before I moved to DC when I was still in New York, and then they'll be like, "Oh, they are the sovereign country." I really hate the sovereign word when I was up there, because if you're talking about the sovereignty of that people, then what about the lives? And that's where I get upset. So I think in terms of the international community, if we can start up with the neighboring countries, if they can build up their political wills and trying to push the Burmese authority, that could be helpful in a certain point. I know many people have done it, but we just have to keep doing it. That is why we call it advocacy.
Great. No, thank you so much. There is one question, and we'll end with that. It seems maybe appropriate for Ahmed, which is Nazneen asked, she's interested in building a youth group in her college. And do you have any advice on how she can connect with, how she could do that to raise humanitarian voices? So if you want to answer that, and then we're going to wind down this webinar. So just for others to think about, is this idea is solidarity. And so to think about sort of your last words of like, how should we be thinking sort of moving forward? But Ahmed, if you can answer the question about
Sure.
The youth group. Yeah.
So there's many ways you could gather groups, because today's generation, there's lots of good kids, because even like, I know this is not relevant, even after the Florida shooting, you've seen how many youth has been gathering together, gathering rallies, and trying to amplify their voice, what they want. And to start off by gathering things, maybe you can have a maybe little event where we could talk about the Rohingya people, because lots of universities and colleges, they have that here. And if you're in New York, you can even have Brother Adam come down to your university, or anybody from the Burma Task Force, because people need to know about the issue, because someone needs to educate them before they can really get into it, because they need to know why they're doing it. Why are they getting involved in something that they don't know about? So first of all, have an event about the Rohingya issue, it will be very, very good. And I know for sure that your school administration, they will help you with it. The student union, if you talk to the student union, they will help you with it. Organize a very small event, have someone to talk about the Rohingya issue, that will help a lot of people to be aware and to learn about the Rohingya issue. And from there, you can come up with lots of other events, because one thing leads to another and leads to another. I think that's a very good place to start.
Great. Yeah, so we do want to wind down, because but if there are resources, so Law at the Margins is, as a media platform, is committed to making these connections happen. So for everyone who's registered, I will make the information of our speakers available, so you can contact them directly. Also, you're welcome to use this webinar. It's recorded. It's going to, you can use this as a way to do education as well. You can share it. And that's part of the reasons why we host these conversations, is that it becomes really information resource. Because I think to get people excited, they need to feel like, why should I get involved in this issue? So with that, let's have some closing remarks about there seems to be two kinds of solidarity: building solidarity amongst the Burmese diaspora, and communities and taking their lead. I think that was something that Adam mentioned. And then those of us who are interested in kind of helping, showing support as sort of a, I guess maybe external solidarity. So maybe you can speak to both or one or what's needed moving forward. And with that, we'll close for tonight, but that doesn't mean that we won't continue our efforts and focus on Rohingya. Just for those you know, Law at the Margins has been focused around Indigenous communities around the world, and also focused around Native American issues, and we have a number of webinars on that. So we do see this as part of a larger effort where we do see Indigenous communities, lands and economic resources being grabbed, and that there are connections here. And so we will continue to highlight and lift up those issues. And so subscribe to us so that you can kind of keep in touch on what's going on. So maybe we'll start in the order of what we began. Myra, solidarity, what's next? Closing thoughts, maybe things that are kind of pressing that you feel like we need to get onto this webinar. And then Ahmed, and then Adam.
I don't have much. Quickly, so after I speak, I probably have to get up because of another call is waiting for me 15 minutes ago. I don't have much to say. I think continue what we're continuing today, what we're doing now, but also be persistent, be perseverance, and add on more. Because the thing is that one person, we cannot be that loud, but the number is bigger, the louder our voice is going to be. But going back to the question earlier about the student thing, I really want to have the one-on-one conversation and see if we can brainstorm and then create something. So I was just asking in my text where the person is based. If the person is based in US, perhaps we can do conference call with and figure out something that we can talk about, and maybe, I don't know, we can create some kind of chain. So yeah. Oh, you are in Michigan, so that's not too far. We can figure something.
Yeah. So we have a contact of everybody who registered, and what I would do is connect all of our speakers, so we can do that offline.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
Don't worry about that. Yeah. So next, Ahmed, in terms of last thoughts, solidarity, maybe one thing you want people to take away from today.
I think I have covered everything, but like I said earlier, you know, all of these people are suffering in many ways. You know, many ways things haven't happened elsewhere. When I saw those women and those children, I really thought to myself, sometimes we treat and love our animals that we have in Canada and North America much, much better than those people are being treated. If an animal died here, we would give a proper burial, proper funeral. There would be people crying for it. But those people there, they have no one. You know, if we don't push our government, nobody would speak up. Because end of the day, you know, they says when people become politicians, they lose their heart. But we have to show them. We have to show them politicians that this issue matters to us. This is personal, and it has gone beyond the limit, and people shouldn't be suffering like this. We should all keep pushing our government to do more, because everybody deserves freedom. Everybody deserves safety. Everybody deserves a life knowing that they will survive till tomorrow. These people don't have that. So we need to keep our voice up, and we got to keep pushing our government. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ahmed. And Adam, any final thoughts. We encourage everyone who can to join Burma Task Force on the 28th for the Advocacy Day. So definitely, if you can, please join there, support them. But other last thoughts before we close for tonight?
Thanks. Yeah, if you could check out .org page, there's a lot of stuff there, and if you go to our website, you can explore the different links and the news articles and so forth. To try to figure out what you can do to help. The disasters of war affect a lot of places, and with Yemen and Syria and other places, but they're all also connected, and to advocate for one really should be to speak for the other, and so I think that a life of human rights education and activism is needed, and we've got to scale this up given what we're facing. Meaning many of us. So I think that this is a good opportunity to raise some issues and raise some questions, but everyone needs to figure out how to take responsibility. These are not, these others that we're talking about. They've been othered for decades by hostile government policies and by, negative cultural trends, by specific people, by their former friends and neighbors. They've been othered. And this kind of horrible trend needs to stop. It seems, though, to be in the US, even in Europe. And so let's not think of the Rohingya as others or as victims. They are us, and we are them. And we should be using our privileges and our resources, find other resources and other powers to take action. So this is a big challenge, and I know that we need your help.
Great. Thank you to our guests today, Myra, Ahmed, and Adam. Law at the Margins looks forward to continuing to work with you. Law at the Margins as a nonprofit organization has signed on to Human Rights Watch's call for sanctions. And so beyond the media work here and the webinars, we hope to also support the advocacy work, both that's happening at the United Nations, on our respective governments, and also at the very human level that Ahmed mentioned. Sometimes we forget around policy, the humanitarian efforts, and so the impact on young people having to live with minimal economic resources, live oftentimes in a foreign country, mental health services. So let's also not forget the importance of just the day-to-day dignity of living. And so that whatever, as Myra said, you can do, just get involved and stay involved. With that, I also want to thank Shahana Hanif, Associate Editor, for tweeting. You can follow at Rohingya Solidarity. Stay in touch with us if you have any thoughts at Law at the Margins. You can email us at editors@lawatthemargins.com. And also a final shout out to the person behind our webinars, Albert Garcia, who's our interactive producer and helps behind the scenes to make these going. And then the last, I want to give a shout out to Jean Hallisey. She has given us permission to use her powerful photographs documenting Rohingyas in the Bangladesh camps. And we'll be sharing some of those throughout as well. So with that, good night, and let's continue to join in this campaign, not just also as was mentioned for Rohingya, but other communities around the world that are directly impacted. That's the mission of Law at the Margins, and we're really happy to facilitate this. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.